Welcome to the Design Our Greenheart podcast, where we explore groundbreaking solutions for a greener future. I'm your host Anish Bajaj, and today we are honored to welcome a truly inspiring guest. Meet Anna Heringer, an award-winning architect whose work redefines architecture as a tool to improve the lives of community and the world around us.
We're still serving the mighty ones, the powerful ones, the ones which have the financial resources. And we do this neglecting the limited resources of our planet. And we have to change this way of doing our profession dramatically and in a very fast pace in the coming years. For me, the process is just as important as the outcome, and that a choice of a material has an enormous effect on society and environment. And so far we go with finances. We think what's the cheaper solution often, and then we go what's the better looking solution. But this can't be the trigger of our decision. But what is very crucial is that we really work with unstabilized earth. That is something that a trend that I'm not very happy about, that we call it, stabilized earth blocks or whatever, and then we just, don't say the stabilized, and we talk about earth blocks and we think we're so green, but in fact, this is a lot of greenwashing happening. So I'm very much an advocate for unstabilized earth, because if you add cement, then you destroy the circularity. Give 1/3 of your time into a bread job, something that pays your bills, the most necessities, and then 1/3 really give to your heart job, the ones where you have the calling and where your love and your passion lies, and the other third is just to simplify your lifestyle. Really. That you go with the light baggage.
Before we welcome our guest, I would like to acknowledge the unstinting support of our partner Villeroy & Boch. Villeroy & Boch is a world-renowned bathroom brand constantly implementing new technologies and solutions to help use energy and raw materials more efficiently, reduce emissions, and continuously increase product sustainability, even exceeding laws and requirements. Sustainability is integral at Villeroy & Boch. Now, without much ado, I'd like to welcome our guest Anna Heringer to the show.
Thank you, Anna. It indeed is a pleasure to have you on this podcast of Greenheart. You've been setting benchmarks and are a beacon for many who wish to practice socially impactful and sustainable architecture. Has this always been the direction of the firm? How did this choice emerge?
Thank you for inviting me. Yes, it's always been the choice. I was very lucky. When I was 19, I lived a year in Bangladesh in a small village called Rettenbacher, and what I learned there was that the most effective strategy for any sustainable development is always to look at the resources you have in your direct surrounding, also within yourself, in your network, and try to make the best out of these kind of resources and not getting depending on external ones. And I had this passion for social justice, for environmental issues, and that was very much deep. So I didn't know if I'm going towards the direction of a social worker, but I also had this deep longing for creativity and using beauty as a kind of engine and driver for change. So I didn't know how to combine these two passions. And then I was lucky that I had a workshop on earth and structures. And the moment I had my hands in the clay, in the material, I knew that this was my missing link, that this was sort of the material where I can achieve social justice, because, with the material that is given by nature for free, we just need lots of hands. So we need lots of work. We have lots of work opportunities, and the money remains with communities, remains with people who really need it. And it's very inclusive, unlike other materials that you buy and then the money gets exported. So that was for me very clear. And at the same time, I could do this in harmony with nature. And on top of it, it's so beautiful. So that was kind of for me really a very important moment.
What will architecture be like in the coming years? We know we have challenges related to climate change and social injustice. Are these concerns being adequately addressed?
Not yet enough. We're still serving the mighty ones, the powerful ones, the ones which have the financial resources. And we do this neglecting the limited resources of our planet. And we have to change this way of doing our profession dramatically and in a very fast pace in the coming years. But what I see, especially in the young generation, is that there is a longing to do meaningful work and not just, filling your own pockets. So I see that there is this longing, and of course there is this huge need. And I think the climate is on our side, So I think changes are going to happen very soon.
When you say the climate is on your side, do you think God's intention is to support humanity? What do you mean by the climate is on our side in that sense?
Right now, climate change is something that we put in future, and it is something that we don't see as pressing as other needs. So I think the situation with the climate change, it will become more and more obvious, and we just feel the urgency more. So I think in that regard, it is definitely, I think the awareness is growing much, much more. And on the other side, I also believe, yes, that in the end, we have a lot more resources within us that we haven't tackled, even on a spiritual side. So I think if we put all these efforts and all these talents on the good one, then I'm sure we're having hope.
Anna, your work has very strong social underpinnings. Do you believe that the act of building a structure and creating that as an architect is really not enough? And it is essentially the act of creating which needs equal attention and consideration for an architect?
Yes, for me, the process is just as important as the outcome. And that was our manifesto with great colleagues around the world, the Love Manifesto. And it's true, we're getting trained in designing the product, the architecture, the building, especially during architecture education. We need to focus also on designing processes and to make them inclusive. And that a choice of a material has an enormous effect on society and environment. And so far we go with finances. We think what's the cheaper solution often, and then we go, what's the better looking solution. But this can't be the trigger of our decisions. So the world is not changing with one big decision. The world is changing with the small everyday decisions that we take, and designing is constant decision making. So what if 8 billion people are taking the same decision as me now, going for that material, going for the concrete instead of the earth, or going, for stabilized earth bricks instead of unstabilized earth bricks. It might be just a few percentage, but if everyone's doing it, it's a huge thing. So I'm really trying to keep this always in my mind. And when I'm deciding and designing, what if 8 billion people are also taking this decision now? And it might be just 10 liters of paint, but what if everyone is using the paint that is destroying the groundwater and toxinating our nature? So that makes really a huge difference. And just because we have the financial means to use that one, it doesn't give us the right to do so. So I think this we have to keep in mind.
Talking about materials, Anna, you've been a champion of natural materials, and mud has been something that has been very intrinsic, and it's visible across a lot of your projects. What makes mud so great?
Oh, it's the champion of all materials when it comes to sustainability. It's the only material I can take from the ground. I can reuse as often as I want without any loss of quality, and I can repair it easily. It's healthy for the humans, for the planets. If I don't need the building anymore, I just return it back to the ground it came from and can plant a garden on top. It's not possible with any other material. Usually when we talk about recycling, we talk about downcycling. We need a lot of energy or materials, again, to create the same quality. And with earth, it's just naturally happening. But what is very crucial is that we really work with unstabilized earth. That is something that a trend that I'm not very happy about, that we call it, stabilized earth blocks or whatever. And then we just, don't say the stabilized, and we talk about earth blocks and we think we're so green, but in fact, this is a lot of greenwashing happening. So I'm very much an advocate for unstabilized earth, because if you add cement, then you destroy the circularity, and also the fantastic capacity to balance the indoor humidity perfectly and to be easily repaired. All these good things you lose when you add cement.
So the studio does a lot of work in rural areas, working with communities and helping improve societies. Is there any interest for you to work in urban areas and to look at societies and cultures there and create more impactful and meaningful design there?
Yeah, I totally want to work in dense urban spaces as well, because what I've seen in all the structures, that especially in the one that we did in front of Hoerbst Graduate School of Design, we built a structure that was built out of the local clay in Boston, which is gray, so it looked like concrete, but people were constantly touching the wall. And that was for me so interesting, because normally you don't run around in our cities and caressing facades and walls. It's not what we do. So it was very obvious that there's a very deep human connection with earth, and that is beyond the visual, and that there is something, we feel attached to, we feel attracted, we feel, comfortable to be surrounded with. So far we talk about the urban fabric, and then we need some parks, we need some greenery to counteract that urban fabric. So now what if the urban fabric was a part of nature itself? It would make us feel so much more happy and healthy and protected and comfortable in our city. So I very much hope so that we're soon able also to prove that it works also in dense urban spaces. And by the way, in history, it was used in urban spaces a lot. And we have examples of towns that are made out of mud. And they work very well, especially because of the density is not something that you feel, oppressed by, or, it's something that embraces you actually when it's done with mud walls. So I think it's very valuable for dense urban spaces.
I often find that architects, and there is clearly a move to work less with your hands and be more dependent on technology. So much so that today it's a fascination with technology. And in a lot of ways, architecture has really submitted itself or succumbed to it in such a great way. What is your take on technology? How is it used in your processes? And how do you view this dependence and submission to technology?
I rather depend on my intuition. I like that more than any sort of technology. I think it's a bit, a human fascination, and probably also boys with toys, for male architecture. And I think that the female, a more intuitive one, is also very important to integrate. And how I personally use technology is, well, I design on clay. So I really have large clay models, 3D sketching with my hands. And I prefer that much to, doing 3D sketching on the computer, because when you do it on real models, you're at the same time in the detail, but you also always have the complex view of the entire body and volume and everything, so that you don't have when you work on screen. And then it's, of course, you work with both hands, so you activate both hemispheres of your brain, so you have much more holistic kind of designing. And the way I use it, so I built these 3D models, then it goes into the computer, and then for example, we let it simulate with climate simulations, and therefore I find it very helpful, to see, okay, is the cross ventilation enough? Do we have enough openings to have to, not to need lights on during the day, and all these things. So, and other walls, should we make them thicker, to allow more thermal mass? So for these kind of things, I like technologies a lot. But then again, it comes to the site, and it's built completely low tech, at least in the favorite parts of the world where I'm building, in Bangladesh or Ghana. And then, what's happening, for example, I designed the windows in a rectangular way, as I did in Ghana, for example, and then the women are coming and they plaster it by their hand, and that they turn roundish, which is beautiful. So I would have never planned it that way, and no computer would have planned it that way, and no artificial intelligence, but the manual intelligence, the art of the process, which is then finally making the co-creation and making it really unique and authentic. And this is something I think you don't create just on a screen.
the emotional quotient and the emotional impact gets embedded into the design scheme.
And I think this is exactly that's. I think this is very important that we give a soul to our buildings. I think you can really feel it, how often the walls have been touched, and like especially with the clay, you really have a physical connection because you touch the walls so often until they have the final. In Africa, they call it charging objects. They say, well, we have objects that are just empty without soul, and then you have objects that are charged, so they have a meaning, they have a soul. So, and I think this charging happens, when you work on it, when you maintain, when you give care to those structures during the process, during the maintenance, and you feel attached, and your love goes in those structures. So this is something that you don't get if you just 3D plot it.
So Anna, your journey started as a teenager in Bangladesh, and you continue to visit and have a very deep bond with that country. You
Yes.
also have Dipti Textiles, an NGO have founded and worked on for more than a decade. So what is the goal of Dipti Textiles, and how does it relate to your personal vision and values?
Dipti Textiles started actually as an act to against this rural-urban migration. I was invited to, with colleagues in how to make, the garment sector more sustainable, and I was quite frustrated with my tools as an architect. I thought, it doesn't help to make a factory building more nice necessarily. It's not touching the core of it, which is like that. The whole industry is dragging people from the rural areas where they have more resilience to this factory hubs and textile hubs, where there is just too many people to have really humane conditions anymore. It's just not possible with that kind of dimension. So I was thinking, how can I contribute as an architect? And I couldn't really find a way, because building up all the infrastructure to get a decentralized production is also a huge effort. So I thought, now I need some other tool. And the tool was the textile. It was the product itself, to design something that can be produced in a completely decentralized way, that is not following any fashion circle, and doesn't have this time pressure, and can be done completely without electricity. Also, it's not depending on all these sources. So it's quite independent. And building upon this immensely beautiful textile culture. So just as in architecture, I'm always trying to find what are the local resources. Same in the textiles, because it's so sad to see, we are kind of imposing this very bad production onto people that have much more to give. It's such a rich culture, and then stupid T-shirts are being produced with a stupid print on it, which is, has nothing, it doesn't resonate at all with what is possible. And we are taking the already used sari blankets, where people were sleeping on it, and then all these layers coming up on the surface again. Then you remember, this yellow sari I was wearing when I was pregnant with my daughter, and then the lungi is coming, saying, yeah, this one was when my husband was, the water buffalo stepped on the toes. And so all the family history is embedded in these blankets, and before they're completely torn, people bring it to our Dipti Textiles place, which is also a modern and bamboo building, the Anandaloy building. And then we see, what can you do out of this piece? Is it maybe gonna be a shirt, or is it gonna be a bigger thing? We also document our own projects onto these textiles. And what the aim is that we give these women the opportunity to stay in their villages and have an income, and also to support each other. So we don't watch the time, and the effectiveness is also there for, meeting and exchanging sorrows, joys, and they really grow so strong together. So this is a beautiful, for me, it's wonderful to see.
So Anna, you are a mentor to many. Also, you conduct various workshops and are very actively involved in teaching. what is your guidance to architects who are starting out today? How should they channel their creativity? How should they be more conscious of their journey? What would your guidance be to the community who's just starting out?
I was very lucky that I could go straight from university in the field and test my ideas. And I would say this is perfect if you can do it that way, because stepping in the footsteps of a generation that caused the climate change and caused social injustice is not necessarily the best strategy. So in case this isn't possible straight away, I would say, give 1/3 of your time into a bread job, something, that pays your bills, the most necessities. And then 1/3 really give to your heart job, the ones, where you have the calling, and where your love and your passion lies. And the other third is just to simplify your lifestyle. Really, that you go with the light baggage, because, if you have to pay things off, then it's, if your flat is too large, if you need a car, if all these things, just cut down on those things, travel light, and then it's possible. And I believe that, we are all made with different talents. Everyone's different and has different talents and different passions and fascination. And if you go with that calling, and I'm sure that life supports you, because life made you like this, so it wants to support you to unleash these potentials that you have, and to use it not just for your own joy but also for others. So if you go that direction, then I'm really sure that life is supporting you. And I can also tell from myself, I mean, it was a risky path. Everyone was saying, hey, you cannot live by this kind of niche, but it's doing this sort of projects. But whenever it was critical on the bank account, I suddenly got an award, or I got a good lecture that was high paid, or I got a teaching commission. So it always worked out, and one just needs to trust. It's of course a challenge to go with your trust and not with your fears, but in the end, that's the rewarding thing. That's where the happiness lies.
Thank you so much for that very motivating thought. On that note, I'd really like to thank you once again for being a part of this discussion. It really was wonderful to have you on the podcast of Greenheart. And you are an icon for many. I wish you all the strength and all the power to keep practicing the love part equally as the bread and the simplification of life. It really is a wonderful thought. So I wish you well and all the success. And I hope to see you in India sometime soon. And
next spring,
more thoughts.
And I'm looking very forward to be back to India. Such a beautiful country.
Looking forward to seeing you. Thank you so much for your time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.